If there's one movie I've been the most intrigued by coming out in 2025, it has to be Mickey 17. I love Parasite and Snowpiercer, two films by the same director, and I've been a huge fan of Robert Pattinson's recent work, and I love sci-fi. Naturally, when all of these things were set to combine, with a sprinkle of other actors I enjoyed, I had to know what the end result would look like. So I watched every trailer and read a lot of articles. These trailers paint a very clear picture of what the movie was going to look like. Our main character, Mickey, voluntarily signs up for the worst job imaginable. They make him do a ton of dangerous stuff that leads to his death, but when he dies, they 3D print him another body, good as new. We'd follow him as he dies 16 times. Then something would go wrong, and there would be two Mickeys, which is against the law, and they'd have to try and figure out how to avoid being caught. Since it's a movie by Bong Joon-ho, I also expected there to be some sort of social commentary about exploiting the working class, or how living in a capitalist society can make someone resort to extremes. All in all, I was expecting to have a great time. However, that's not what Mickey 17 is about. These trailers are deceptive, and I fell for it. I would have been perfectly happy watching the movie the trailers described to me, and I'm pretty sure it would have been a good movie. But Mickey 17 is so much more. In order to discuss it though, I'm going to have to discuss spoilers. If you don't want to be spoiled, I suggest you wait until after seeing the movie to finish this video. And with that out of the way, let's get into exactly what I mean by the title of the video. There's a part in the trailer where Mickey falls into a crevasse on an ice planet. Glenn from The Walking Dead shows up and says,
"Mickey, it's not looking very good for you."
We are then shown a few creatures. Glenn asks,
"What's it feel like to die?"
Then, as one of the creatures charges, Mickey talks about how much he hates dying, and that he's done it 17 times. Additionally, this is shown at the end of a brief montage of deaths. The trailer is basically telling you as clearly as it can that Mickey dies here. I assumed that this would be Mickey 16, and the next one would be the one we follow for the rest of the movie. However, I was surprised to realize that this scene in the ice cave is actually how the movie begins. It's the first thing we see. Glenn finds Mickey and scales down the crevasse, but only partially, to pick up the relatively undamaged weapon Mickey was carrying. He then rather nonchalantly tells Mickey that he's going to leave him to die. Glenn excitedly talks about how they'll just print a new copy, and then he asks how many times he's died. Mickey frustratedly says that he's number 17. Glenn leaves, the creature charges, and Mickey waits for his death. This movie has already defied my expectations in a few ways, and we're only a few minutes in. Firstly, Glenn's treatment of Mickey is far more openly emotionless and hostile than the trailer made it seem. And second, Mickey said he's number 17. And since this movie is called Mickey 17, my expectation that he would be eaten by this creature and killed is shattered. Why would it be named after a version that gets killed a few minutes in? This led me to conclude that Mickey somehow makes it out alive, and as it turns out, this is the case. He isn't eaten by the creature, but is instead dragged out of the caves by it and let go. It might seem like a simple bait and switch, but I think setting up the expectation that these creatures are hostile, or otherwise just hungry animals, followed by demonstrating the opposite is one of the smartest moves the movie makes, and the trailer helps this out a ton. In reality, they're intelligent, they're individuals, and they can communicate. Not only that, they chose to save Mickey when a fellow human didn't, and was actively mean about it too. In fact, Glenn here is Mickey's only friend and former business partner. Together, the two of them opened a macaron shop with money from a loan shark, and when it went under, they needed to get as far away from them as possible. Mickey, possessing few skills himself, didn't have any choice but to apply to be an expendable, the term for someone who does all the dangerous jobs and dies in the process. Glenn, on the other hand, sweet-talked his way into being a pilot. The fact that two of them were friends, and in this situation together, makes him treating Mickey this way far more upsetting. If the person closest to Mickey before leaving Earth would treat him this way, what does that say about the rest of the humans on board? As it turns out, nothing good. Most of them follow the teachings of a rich religious leader / businessman who tried and failed to run for office. He's played by Mark Ruffalo. They fanatically cling to him and his teachings, despite them not actually coming from him, but rather someone influencing him. They are taught to see the idea of printing humans as immoral and wrong. As such, they treat Mickey like dirt, even though he didn't really have a choice but to sign up for this. Furthermore, they have no problem looking the other way as he dies for them over and over, doing essential work to make sure they survive. They subjugate him, treat him like a second-class citizen, and then exploit him in horrifying ways. This whole system was designed on purpose by the same cult leader, who happens to be on the same ship as Mickey, living a lavish lifestyle. Despite saying that human printing is morally wrong, and convincing his supporters that it is, the expendable program was his idea. He convinced the government to allow it to happen because it benefits him. He doesn't care about the morality, he just uses it to convince his supporters that people like Mickey deserve to be treated that way. And they believed him. Glenn was already a pretty terrible friend to Mickey, but because of this framing he gets so much worse, to the point of valuing Mickey less than a gun. And yet with limited understanding of who or what Mickey is, the creatures save his life. It wouldn't have mattered to anyone besides Mickey if he died, but they saved him anyway. Mickey then makes it back home, where they find out they already made another Mickey. There are now 2 copies, something Mark Ruffalo also campaigned to outlaw. In the case of 2 copies of the same person, called multiples, all copies are to be exterminated, and the memory deleted so no more can be made. Mickey 17 and 18 are now in danger of this, and they try throwing each other into a furnace to hide the evidence. They then go to Mickey's girlfriend's room. I haven't mentioned her yet, but she's probably the best thing in this entire movie. She's played by Naomi Ackie, who was in The Rise of Skywalker, and I think she was great. In this movie, she plays Mickey's girlfriend, Nasha. She's smart and compassionate and speaks her mind to a fault. Mickey always speaks very kindly of her, and she's always there for him, in more ways than one. She sticks up for him while he's being harassed, and she's there to comfort him when he dies. In fact, she's the only person to be there for him every time. Everyone else ignores him as he slowly succumbs to a poison gas they gave him, or watches as he falls victim to a newly discovered disease. But in the movie's most emotional scene, she holds him and comforts him as he dies, and everyone else ignores him. She provides him with the proper dignity a dying person deserves, even if he's gonna come back. It's truly heartbreaking to watch, but it strengthens the relationship these two share. When she finds out there are 2 Mickeys, she isn't just ready to help, she's actually excited. In fact, sometimes when Mickey is reprinted, something is different about him. Usually it's minor personality changes, and in the case of 18, he's angry, quick to act violently, and self-confident. No matter what's different about Mickey though, Nasha loves every version of him the same. She's always there for him, no matter what. In fact, she even gets herself in trouble when 18 decides to try assassinating Mark Ruffalo. She stops him, but still stands by him and sticks up for him. In fact, doing so gets her arrested and potentially thrown into the furnace. But she still decides to humiliate Mark Ruffalo for being incompetent. Like I said before, she's always there for him, but she's the only one who actually even sees him as human at all. She never asks what it's like to die, and she never belittles Mickey. In fact, she's the only one in the entire movie who even bothers using his actual name, Mickey Barnes. In contrast, there's a scene where Mickey is unwittingly poisoned with experimental food, and it goes so wrong that he collapses to the ground. In response, they inject him with an experimental painkiller without asking for his consent. It doesn't make anything better, so Mark Ruffalo decides it's best to shoot him. His wife objects to a gun being put against Mickey's head, only long enough for her to grab the rug Mickey is lying on. She, and everyone else on board, care more about a rug than they do Mickey. Everyone except Nasha. Similarly, she's also the first one to identify that the creatures that saved Mickey did so on purpose, while Mark Ruffalo and his wife want to kill and eat them. And this is where the core of the movie's message lies. Mickey, like the creatures, is unfairly treated and killed mercilessly. He's seen as a method of obtaining progress, or avoiding negatives, just like the creatures are seen as a roadblock or an opportunity for food. Nasha is the only one willing to stick up for both of them. And she's the only one willing to stand up to the people that are almost solely responsible for convincing everyone else. The rich cult leader who can't even come up with his own hateful ideas himself, and the crew of people who enable him. As the tension builds, 2 creatures are found on the ship. One is killed and the other is captured. This enrages the other creatures, who gather in massive numbers outside. They tell Mickey through a translator that they demand the captured one, who is just a baby, be released, and that the humans kill one of their own as retribution. If they can agree to these terms, there will be peace between the 2 groups. Naturally, Mark Ruffalo and his cronies want them all exterminated instead, and decide to poison them with the same gas they killed Mickey with earlier. Both Mickeys, Nasha, and one scientist work together to prevent this. They rescue the baby from being dipped in the furnace, and return it to its own kind just as Mickey 18 sacrifices himself to blow up Mark Ruffalo. In the aftermath, Mickey 17 gets rid of his number, instead becoming Mickey Barnes once again. The human printer is blown up, a symbolic gesture that this plight is over, and that his status as human has once again been restored. As I've said countless times, I thought this movie might be a metaphor about the hardships of being exploited by rich people, but it ended up being a story about how compassion, respect, and mutual understanding can overthrow hate. It has all those same elements I was expecting, but it also had so much more, and a lot of my expectations being exceeded had to do with the trailers being deceptive. It used my knowledge of sci-fi and the director's previous work against me, and that set me up with certain expectations. I never dreamed that the same person who made Snowpiercer and Parasite would turn around and immediately make something that fills me with hope instead of dread. Yes, it's a political satire that is pretty dark, but by the end the humans rejected their psychopathic, manipulative, racist leader and embraced genuine equality. They found a new home and began learning to live in it. Mickey is free and becomes a truly valued member of the community. Watching this in theaters was so cathartic and moving that I had to talk about it. While the trailer made the movie look really interesting already, what I instead got was so much more. I've never really had an experience in the theater like that before, and it was one I hope everyone gets to have at some point. Maybe the movie being marketed this way is why it's struggling at the box office right now. And even though I just spoiled it for everyone who hasn't seen it yet, I strongly urge you to do so before it leaves theaters. It has some issues that hold it back from being perfect in my eyes, mostly due to a slow pace. But I won't be surprised if it ends up being my favorite movie of the year. If you're watching this by the time it already left theaters, I strongly encourage you to seek out a copy and give it a watch if it sounds at all interesting. You won't be disappointed. I'm going to give Mickey 17 an 8 out of 10. Thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. If you liked it, please let me know by hitting the like button, and by subscribing if you'd like to see more of this kind of content. Thank you to everyone who makes these videos possible, and to everyone who watches them. I plan on making more, this time for real. I also have a second channel where I plan on making videos somewhat consistently. Check it out if you haven't already. It's a lot different from the stuff I make here. In the meantime, I hope to see you next time. Bye for now.